Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, John Chuback, MD. We have you back. Thank you so much for joining us back on Savvy Broadcasting. We're grateful to have you here. As we chatted just before we hit the go button, you were here last time to share your past book, which was Make Your Own Damn Cheese, which I love, Understanding, Navigating, and Mastering the Three Mazes of Success. Today, we're going to talk about your latest book, the Straight A Handbook, the 50 most powerful secrets for ultimate success in and out of the classroom. Very important for people entering into the college realm and wondering how to get the most out of their experiences there. It's not just textbook. There's a lot more out there to learn. But you also have chubackeducation.com if anyone wants to learn more. But before we head on out to get deep into your new book, share a little bit about your backstory for people who might not know about who you are.
Well, my backstory is that I'm a board-certified cardiovascular surgeon, and I trained up at the University of Rochester at Strong Memorial Hospital. And the first several years I was in practice, I did just open heart surgery in northern New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan, in the suburbs of New York City. And during that period of time, I was doing some personal development work and started to do some soul searching and asking myself, was this really the career path I wanted to stay on? And I had sort of a major pivot in my practice. I still practice vascular surgery, but I went out of the hospital and away from doing major open heart surgery to a private clinic just doing varicose vein work, laser-based varicose vein work. And that whole transition was a fascinating segue into a new life for me, really, in many ways. And since then, I've become fascinated with personal development, and I have been adding what I've learned to that area and hopefully helping other people find their real passion in life.
Love it. So would you say that now this full rung has made you more of an empirical healer now that you've, gone more inward in your journey of self-development?
Well, certainly I think so. I mean, I'm still an allopathic physician and a surgeon, and I do a lot of traditional Western medicine on a day-to-day basis. But certainly that whole path opened my mind to other alternative therapies and adjunctive therapies. In fact, I also have a company called Vita Support MD, which creates dietary supplements for people generally with vascular problems and supplements that promote immunity and good health and wellness.
So now you mentioned varicose veins and stuff like that. What are those? Because I'm just not familiar with what that is.
Well, varicose veins are sort of, we think of them as those bulging, ropey, distended veins that we see in people. Very often it's associated also with spider veins. And, we think of them sort of as flabby veins that have lost their tone and their muscle. So there are various ways of treating them with laser, with surgery, with injection therapy. But most of it today is very high tech and office-based under local anesthesia. It's sort of kind of like an easy trip to the dentist, so to speak, rather than hospitalization and general anesthesia, which was required years ago.
Well, that's awesome. Now, does this play a part with the health of your heart system, or is it separate? Is it a separate thing?
Well, the entire vascular system is related and intertwined, as you know. There's no very strong correlation between the heart and the venous system, but certainly when you have blood pooling in the legs in these dilated varicose veins, it makes sense to think that that's going to put some additional work on the heart and on the circulation. And people do wind up with swollen legs and discolored legs, and sometimes even open sores and ulcers in the last stage, what we call stage 6. So it is a very, very serious health condition when it gets to advanced stages.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, I'm now excited to find out, why did you write the Straight A Handbook? What was the impetus behind that?
Well, it's a great question. The Straight A Handbook really started and is in many ways a book for academic achievement and academic excellence. But as the subtitle would tell you, it's also for personal development outside of the classroom, and for personal success outside of the classroom. So anyone can read this book, people of all ages and in all walks of life. And those things that I learned that helped me in the classroom, I've also found are extremely helpful outside the classroom as well.
Mm-hmm. So, through all your academic study, because I'm guessing as a doctor, it doesn't just end when you leave and get your medical degree. It's an ongoing process. And then you said you also educated and grew as a person and did a lot of self-development. What was like one of the biggest lessons you've taken home from all of those experiences?
Well, I think the biggest lesson that I've taken out of all of that self-development work is that you become what you think about most of the time. What the mind is focused on will be transmuted and will manifest itself in the physical realm, in the material world. And this is a very, very empowering truth. When you really accept that and absorb that. I talk a lot about that and Make Your Own Damn Cheese in what we call the emotional mind or the subconscious mind, which is where our beliefs reside. When you believe what I just said, that you become what you think about most of the time, then you can use your thinking mind to really manifest an incredible life and lifestyle around you.
It is so amazing, Dr. Chuback, because I've at times in my life had this image or idea, this is where I want to go next. And I'll start to really like hone in on it. And this is important to me. I'll think about it. I'll talk about it, maybe put a vision board together for it. And lo and behold, one was moving to Texas here, that we're now in this wonderful country of Texas and living in this wonderful apartment. But I had envisioned that just 6 months before it actually, boom, we're here. And it's interesting, and it can be for anything. Maybe I want to go be a doctor, but I'm in my late 30s or early 40s, and oh my gosh, it's impossible. It's not. I mean, there's so many people who have restarted a new career, even becoming a doctor late in life.
It's absolutely true, as I said, the most powerful and the most important thing I've ever learned. Now, I've been through a lot of school. 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 5 years of general surgery, 2 years of cardiac surgery. I've done heart transplants, artificial hearts, and so forth. So I've learned some fascinating and incredible things. But I can assure you, and I want to restate it, the most incredible, the most powerful thing I've ever come to know and believe is that you become what you think about. And so whatever it is that one wants to manifest, if they will focus on that, meditate on that, study that, write about it in their journals, and just ruminate about this new change, this positive change in their life. It doesn't happen magically. I'm not talking about mysticism here, but that focus will then lead you to pursue those things which you must do, the actions you must take and the behaviors you must take to manifest those things. You didn't get to Texas by blinking your eyes. There was,
a lot of work.
There was a process and a lot of work. But by thinking of it and manifesting the idea, it was transmuted into the physical reality that we live in.
Yeah. And you said something super important there, which is first ruminating it, writing about it, putting out there, really focusing on it. But then a very important part, which some people can forget about, I want this reality, this outcome, but then now there's certain actions and behaviors that have to take place in order for that to happen. And that's often where people will fall off the wagon. They'll be like, they'll think about it, they'll ruminate it, they'll talk about it, but they'll never go forward with the action. What would be your suggestion or ideas on how to push forward into the action realm?
Well, one of the things I like to tell people is that built into this very, very well-known phrase now, this fascination with the law of attraction, in the word attraction is action. And if you leave that part of it out, I think you're in deep trouble. In other words, when we go back to, let's say, the Straight A Handbook, I have all kinds of fabulous, powerful, valuable tips and ideas and techniques and so forth. But if you don't take action on them, they're not going to have any impact on your life. If you don't study for a calculus exam, if you don't put the hours in, if you don't do the repetition, if you don't do the problem practice, if you don't go for the extra help, if you don't do all the things necessary, you will not magically produce an A in calculus. I can assure you of that. So the action is mandatory and essential. The key is to find those things that you love, that is so important to you, that you really want, and then the work is less painful, shall we say. It's less laborious. It's still work, don't get me wrong, but when you know where you're going, when your motive is great, then your motivation becomes easy.
Yeah, this is such a great, Dr. Chuback mentioning this, because I have been picturing in my mind a more fit, healthy person. And I don't mean skinny, I mean healthy in all realms, like my heart, my whole cardiovascular system, everything. But it's been an ongoing journey of what does that look like? What does a person who is totally fit or healthy look like, be like in an everyday world? And so it's been an ongoing process for me, but little by little, I've been checking out maybe YouTube videos, checking out more fitness stuff. And bit by bit, I've been changing my lifestyle, some of the things I eat, and now having a great desire and excitement to go work out, hired a personal trainer. But see, what I think is interesting about the whole thing is it's not a one, all of a sudden, boom. It's kind of like you begin to go down the road, then more shows up and more shows up. Because people are like, how am I ever going to get to Z? It's like when you start moving forward, the teacher shows up, the video, whatever is the exercise realm you need to take, or whatever the next step is for your journey.
Absolutely right. In fact, in the book, Straight A Handbook, I use an example of it's the fortune cookie chapter, and where one of my professors shares with me something he learned in a fortune cookie, which was that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so when you are ready, these things will begin to present themselves to you, and then you will have awareness and recognition that these things are happening, and then you can act on them and take full advantage of them. If you don't know where you're going, when opportunities arise, you won't know what they mean, what they represent, and you won't be compelled to take advantage. I always remind my students, it's sort of the story of the Alice and the Cheshire Cat, where they meet, and Alice says, "Which way do I go?" And the Cheshire Cat says, "Well, where is it that you're going?" And she says, "Nowhere in particular." And then he says, "Well, then it doesn't matter which way you go." So if you don't know where you're headed, if you don't know that weight loss and health and improved wellness and blood pressure, cholesterol, fitness, energy, whatever those things are that you're looking for, if you don't have that crystal clear in your mind that that's your personal destination, then nothing is going to happen to evoke that in your behavior. So you have to begin with clear goals and clear desires to know this is my destination. And then, as you said, step by step by step, a journey of 1,000 leagues begins with the first step. And that's exactly the proper way of going about it.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I was just looking upon a story from a girl in UK who said, I just saw someone doing something. It was the new year and people make their resolutions. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. But she said, I saw someone doing a chin up or whatever. And I thought, well, that looks really hard. You know what? I'd like to try that. But it wasn't like, oh, that's my end all goal. I just, oh my gosh, I'll die if I don't reach it. She was like, I'm curious. I would like to try that. So she just made it a goal that I'm going to do one. It took her 6 months to do one. And she said, I would just randomly go to the park and just hang on the pole and try to pull myself up and do it. And after 6 months, she did one. And I was like, oh my God, I did it. And then it started her. And now she's actually a fitness trainer years later. But she said it was on the journey, that one step of, can I do that? And then I'm going to attempt that. I'm going to do that one thing, one of them. And that one of them turned into, boom, years later, she's a successful trainer. So it's amazing where that one thing can lead you.
Absolutely. And, you remind me of two great books. One was called The One Thing, and the other one was called Mini Habits, neither of which I can recall the author's names off the top of my head, but your listeners should check them both out, Mini Habits and The One Thing. In Mini Habits, the gentleman who wrote it, the author, began because he was deconditioned and out of shape, and he made it his goal to do one push-up a day. one. And he said to himself, if I can't do that much, if I can't bring myself to get that committed to my health and my strength and my wellness and my ability, then I'm never going to get anywhere. You can't set a goal to do 100 if you can't do one. So this pull-up idea is absolutely perfect, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You start with 1, and then you can go to 2 and 5 and 10 and so forth. In the one thing, the concept that they share is the person says, well, where would I really like to be? I'd like to be able to do 100 push-ups consecutively. And then you say to yourself, well, if that were to be true, how long would it take? You say, well, maybe 1 year. Say, where should I be in 6 months? 50. Where should I be in 1 month? 10. If that's true, where should I be today? Let's start with 1. And then you ask yourself, what's the one thing I could do right this moment to get myself going toward that 100 push-up goal? And then you fall on the floor and you start pushing. Whether you move or you don't is a different subject. But all of us can lay on the floor and push against it.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing you can do to get going in the right direction. And I think these kinds of, skills and tools are incredibly important if put into practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the key. You can get a gym membership or something. You don't use it. It ain't going to do nothing for you. But I think that's the key why a lot of people say I had these goals, but they just never manifested, is they seem impossible. And that's where we go back to what you said in the beginning. You have to have that belief that I can reach that. And I think that's where people stop themselves. They're like, oh, I'd love to do that goal of becoming a doctor, but it seems so arduous. There's no way I'd ever reach it. Well, with that thinking pattern, you never will. But I think what I love about what you're saying here is that one step and another, the small bits you can make towards the ultimate goal. Because you're not going to be a doctor overnight. You're not going to do whatever it is you want to do overnight. It's the small step towards that eventually lead to the goal.
It is, in fact, the only way that it can be done. In the book, again, it's funny, we're touching on some great subjects that we happen to cover in the book. In the book, I tell a story of when I was about 18 or 19 years old. I was volunteering in a hospital. I had in my first year of college, pre-med, and I had this idea that I wanted to become a cardiac surgeon, an open heart surgeon. And then in speaking to some of the surgeons at the hospital, I became aware of the fact, and awareness is one of my favorite words. It's so important. I became aware of the fact that under the best circumstances, it would take me 15 years from where I was to become a cardiac surgeon. And I became very, very, troubled by that, dejected almost. And I went back home and I spoke to my father, who was a physician. He was an OBGYN. And I said, Dad, I'm really rethinking this whole, cardiac surgical thing. He said, why is that? I said, well, I was talking to some of the guys at the hospital and I found out it would take me 15 years to become a cardiac surgeon. And he said, well, how many years will pass in the same amount of time if you don't become a cardiac surgeon? And I thought, wow, I guess the 15 years is going to pass one way or the other. I'm going to have to do something in that time. So the question is, at 33 or 34, do you want to have fulfilled that dream, or do you want to have left a dream unfulfilled and unrealized? Because the time will pass. And when we set lofty goals for ourselves, whether it's training for a marathon when currently you can't run around the block, or becoming a cardiac surgeon when you're a freshman in college, these things take time. Great goals take time. Those are the facts. And then you start with square one and you move to square two, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And that's a great point to make, because I've heard people say they're moving towards a goal, and if they don't start seeing the progress they think they should see, they want to just step off. And some of the things like accomplishing that goal of becoming a surgeon is an arduous goal, and it's going to take that time to build towards it. And once you even reach all the schooling is complete, then becoming a master at it is going to take even more time. But it's just awesome. It's on the journey to becoming better and better and better. Because I think in our culture, we've come to this idea of, I want to reach success. I'm at the top of the mountain. But then what? You don't ever want to get to, I'm at the top. And one opera singer, I think it was Placido Domingo, it said, you never want to reach the top, because then there's nowhere to go but down.
Exactly right. Yes. And I think another key point in that I teach quite a bit. Let's take diet, for example. Diet is a very, very difficult thing. Weight loss is a very difficult thing. If it weren't, there wouldn't be so many companies, products, and trainers, and coaches, and professionals dedicated to the field. It's obviously a very, very difficult thing. Mm-hmm. Patients in my practice, for example, become very, very frustrated because they've been dieting 6 weeks or 10 weeks and they really haven't lost any weight and so forth. And I understand how frustrating that can be. This is something I've worked with my whole life and battled personally as well. Mm-hmm. But what I try to point out to them is, well, look on the bright side. And this is a very bright side. In that 6 or 10 weeks, maybe you haven't lost any weight, but you haven't gained any either. And if you had not been dieting, if you had not been consciously aware of your exercise and your nutrition and so forth, maybe in that same 6 weeks, you would have gained 3 pounds. And maybe in 6 months, you would have gained 15 pounds. Mm-hmm. So even maintaining the steady state is a victory in many mm-hmm. cases, that you're not going backward, you're not going downhill, as Placido Domingo said. Mm-hmm. And you don't necessarily have to be at the top of anything to go backward. So we keep fighting the good fight, taking our small victories with our bigger victories, and realizing that sometimes even maintaining our ground is a success.
It is. It is. One guy I know actually had just started a fitness plan several years back. He was really overweight, maybe 300 plus pounds. And he'd been working out for about 6 weeks, really focused, hired a trainer. He had a heart attack. And his wife and him are like, after all this work, look, I had a heart attack anyway. I'm like, yeah, the doctor said if you hadn't started exercising, you'd probably be dead right now.
Great point. Boom. Exactly. And there could be a lot of truth to that. And as you remember, you probably remember, one of the male trainers who was one of the big celebrities on The Biggest Loser, he was in fantastic shape, a professional trainer, et cetera. Yeah. He literally dropped dead in the gym. And they brought him back, thank God, and he's still living, but he was young and fit. So sometimes you have underlying genetic predisposing factors and so on and so forth. But as they told that gentleman, it's possible that if he had not been exercising, he wouldn't have the physiologic reserve to recover from that event. And now he did. And since he did, it wasn't time to quit and give up on exercise and diet and wellness. It was time to redouble his efforts. Now, whether he got a stent or was on medication or bypass surgery or whatever, now he was safer than ever to get back on that journey and start going forward again. Yeah,
absolute awesome lessons for our audience today. Where do they get a copy of your new book, The Straight A Handbook? Where do they get a copy?
You're not going to believe this, but it will be at Amazon.com. A small bookseller that's online. I think everybody's heard of it by now, right? Yeah.
Very small. And everyone, please find out more about Dr. Chuback at chubackeducation.com as well. And I just have to thank you again, Dr. John Chuback, for coming back to Savvy Broadcasting. Thank you.
I look forward to next time.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.